Hello, my name is jahg and welcome back to another installment of jahg Teaches Java. And in the previous episode, what we did was we finished off the select list command, which was the last of the commands that require a list name. Everything else is going to work on the selected list. That is the reason we needed this hash map up here to store the person's name and the name of the list they want to work on. Remember, it only stores one player with one value per player. So, okay, that's what we got. Now, the command we're going to work on today is new item, and the way this is going to work is I've got already the framework set up down here somewhere. Here it is. So there's quite a bit to this. So the first thing we need to think about is, have they got a selected list already selected? That's what I want to know. Have they got a list already selected? And if so, is it a valid list? So there's two parts to the decision we're making here. So let's deal with the first part first. Now I'm going to space this out a little bit oddly. So forgive me for that. There we are. So I need to determine two things. The first thing I need to see is, have they actually selected a list? So we're going to use selected lists and then the get item. Now the way this is going to work is it requires a key. So the key we're going to work on is the player's name. Because remember, the keys inside this are, oh, that's the wrong thing. Let's try that again. It sometimes does that. Get name. In fact, let me close this so it's a little less laggy. There we go. So the keys are the person's name. So selected lists.get will actually retrieve the value from that list that goes with their name. If it's not null, then it must be a valid list, or it must have been a selected list. But what if they selected a list that did exist, and then they removed that list, which is possible, but then they tried to actually work on that list again, even though it's been removed. So just having this bit of code we've got at the moment that checks to see whether there is a list selected isn't enough. We also need to know if it's still in the file. Well, that's okay, because we used a bit of code like this before right here. We checked to see whether a given list already existed. So I'm going to say if selected lists get player name does not equal null, and that's what that symbol means, or those symbols I should say, and oh, I got too many brackets there, and player list config is list, and then we give it the name from here, which I know is a bit confusing. So I'm going to get this in there. I think I've got too many brackets maybe. I will figure that out in just a minute. So that goes, wait, yeah, too many of them. There we go. Right, so if they've selected a list and that list is still in the file, remember this gets the name of the actual list that they've selected. So if they've selected bacon, then this will be my lists.lists.bacon, which should get me to this list here. So if it passes these two criteria, we've got a list and we can do something with it. Fine. If it doesn't pass either of those criteria, one or the other, doesn't matter, or indeed both, I guess, then we want to display some sort of error message. Now, the error message we're going to put in first, because that's the easiest part of this, frankly. And it's a bit confusing, though, what we have to put for this error message, because basically we don't know which of these tests failed. We could do separate ones, separate ifs to see, but it's better just to summarize it, I think. So I'm going to say you have no list selected, or it was removed, because that covers all bases then. Right, job done on the error message. Now, getting back to the meat of this, I've already got a list selected. I'm guaranteed that that's the case here. We can access that list using the player list config and putting in this particular path in order to get to that particular list. So let's actually make use of it somehow. So the first thing I need to do is grab that particular list. Well, I can do that I can use some code similar to that we had here, actually. In fact, I should be able to borrow this line and just tweak it. Let's do that. So the first thing I need to do is grab an array list. The array list is going to be, it's not going to be args1 though this time. It's going to be this selected lists thing, because there are no arguments to this that are appropriate to the actual list name. So I'm just going to put this on another line to make that a little clearer. So here we've grabbed the list. So we've got array list of strings, list equals, then we've cast, we've gone to the player list config file, told it get us a string list, here's the path, mylists.lists plus whatever they've named their selected list, and at this point we'll have a list. We're guaranteed it's in the file because of this particular if statement up here. So now we can do what we want with it. We could display it on the screen or whatever. That's something we're going to need to do actually for the view list that doesn't require a list name. However, moving on, the next thing we need to do is I'm trying to add an item into this file, essentially. So maybe I'm trying to add an item to the test group, so it needs to have one of those at the beginning. That's automatic. And it might be, this is a test. It might be something like that, which has multiple words, got spaces in between them. We don't want to add them all as separate items because that would be ridiculous. So I need a way of taking all the arguments that they've actually put on their command line and bunching them together. For instance, they'll have something like my list, it's actually my lists, isn't it? New item, and then they'll have this is a test, something like that. So I need to be able to take from here onwards, stick them all together into one string, and then add it to my list. Otherwise, it will only take the first word, because I can use args0 to get to this. Args1 gets me this, 2, 3, 4, I don't know how many there might be. So to get around that problem, I need to kind of build up a string piecemeal. I need to build it up bit by bit. So I'm going to create a variable called new item. That's it. And I'm going to then loop through all of these items, avoiding this first one. Now, I don't know how many items there are. It's an array. I want to skip the first one, so I can't use the types of loops we've used before, where we've used something like this, because that won't skip the first one, and there's no way of getting it to skip just the first one. So I can't use a simple for loop. So I have to go with something a little more complex, and it starts like this. For int I equals 1, because I want to start from 1 onwards, not from 0. I need it to keep going while I is less than args.length, so that it goes from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and so on automatically. The length will give us how many. If we're still less than that, we can actually keep reading more. And I want to automatically move on to the next value. I++ is a quick way of adding 1 to the value of this value. So if it starts at 1, it checks to see if that's a valid argument, pulls it out, does something with it, adds 1 to it. So now I equals 2, so it'll look at this one. Is that a valid one? And so on. So we've got a loop that will loop from here onwards. If for some reason you want to loop from here onwards, just change this to a 0. Now, what do I want to do? Well, I want to take the existing item and I want to add on the argument that I've just found. So args I will get me to that. I'll explain that in a minute. And a space on the end, which is a bit confusing, but I'll explain this. This is args0. We're ignoring that. This is args1. This is args2, and so on. This space exists nowhere inside my code. So if I just glued them together without spaces, then it would come out as a single item like that, which is not how I want them to appear. So I've got to put these spaces back manually in this method. This is just one method of doing it. We'll see another method, a more efficient method perhaps later on. So how is it getting to args? How is it getting to this word here? Well, that's args0, this is args1. If you remember, this variable here is I. It's set to 1 to start with. So this actually translates as args1 the first time it runs through it. I++ will add 1 to the value of this, so that I is now 2, so that's equivalent to having args2 there, which gets us to this word. And so on, while I is less than the length. So length of this is 5, So we want to go from 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is less than 5, but 5 is not less than 5. So it will grab everything from there onwards, which is what I want to do. So args I inside this loop is a very useful mechanism. It's like a counter. Now, the reason I've used the value I here, or the name I, is because that's just a standard in this type of language that use I and J for like counters. You could call it anything. Call it counter if you wish, and put that word wherever there's I, and it would still work. So, like that. That's still valid code. In fact, I'll leave it there. Why not? Just to prove my point. Now, at this point, we will have a string of text like this, but with a space on the end. So we've now got that. Right? Because this is adding a space in between each word. It can't detect the last word and not put a space. Well, it could, but I'd need extra code. So I'm going to trim that space off manually. Now, there is a way we can do that in one line of code. I can do this. New item equals new item dot trim. And as you can see from this information, it returns a copy of the string with leading and trailing spaces removed. So now I've got rid of the extra space on the end, just the one extra that was on the end of it. The in-between ones it keeps. So at this point I've got a string in here that I can actually finally save in my list, in my file. So how am I going to do this? Well, remember we've already grabbed the existing list from the file here. It's called list. So I can use list.add because it's an array list, and I can just add in new item. Simple as that. So we've now got the list out of the file with our additional item added in. Now I need to save that file again. So that's fair enough. So there are two steps to this. Remember, I need to take this list and I need to add it back into my config file. So I'm going to use player list config dot set, because that's how you set these things. It then needs a path, which I know is going to be my lists dot lists dot, and then the name of the list, which I know I can get from selected lists dot get, and then the player's name in here, which I can get from player dot get name. There it is. The actual value I want to save is just list. So that's that. And that will do. So I've now updated my actual config. I need to save the file again. Remember we did this in one of these others. I'm going to go and grab the code of that. Here it is. So I need to try and save it and then catch an exception if there was one. I'm just going to grab all of this for now. I'm going to put it at the end of my bit of code here for saving. And I get this. So now I have some code which grabs the existing list from the file, builds a new item, a new list item by adding all the words together. It removes the extra space from around them, just the ending space. It adds it to the built-in list here. It puts it in the config file. It then saves the config file with a new item in the list, and that's it. Job done. I should probably inform the user that it's been added, so let's do that as our final step of this. Send message, and we'll have, I don't know, item added to the list, and then we'll put the name of the list there. So again, to get the name of the selected list, we use selected list, which is our list at the top, get, and then player get name, because the names of the players are the keys that allow us access to these things. So we've got item added to that, plus I want like a full stop at the end to make it a proper sentence, and that's it. That's my code ready for adding items. So let's give this a go. There may be something I've missed. We'll find it by testing it. Testing is a valid and vital and most important part of the development process. So there's our plugin. I'm going to paste it in here. I'm going to reload that. I need to start up Minecraft and log in and do the magic. Now, the code we had here for adding an item, you should perhaps be able to do the removing of an item yourself based on very similar code. In fact, I'm going to leave that as an exercise for you, and maybe I'll sneakily update a video later on to show that final solution of that. Let's give this a go, however. So first of all, I need to select a list. So, well, actually, let's try my lists. What was it? New item. Hello. And it should do that. You have no list selected or it was removed. Very true. So let's let's go back and do my lists, select list, and then we'll have test, I think it was called. There we are. And if I now try and add my hello or something else, let's add honk. Item added to the test. I should say to the test list, really. I'll do that in a minute. If we come back to here, you can see there it is. Ta-da! It adds items to my list. Removing items should be a very similar pattern. So this code works perfectly. The other item I'm going to do very quickly, since you are going to do the remove item part of it, that's this one. The other item I have yet to do is, it's part of the view list thing. Because at the moment, if I want to view a list, I have to put the full command, my lists, I need to do view list, and then I need to actually give it the name of the list, and it will do it correctly, as you can see there. If I just do it without the name of this, even though we know that the test list has been selected, it does nothing. You see, it didn't repeat the list, it just did nothing. I think it should do that. I think it should actually display the list from the selected list if I haven't actively already selected one. So I'm just going to disconnect from that. Let's hope this isn't too laggy for the moment. So I've already got the framework of this set up. We set this up in the first example. It's very similar code to that I had in the earlier one. So I'm just going to borrow all of this. So let's start by borrowing all of the code from the view list full command, and I'm going to paste it into there. I think that should be right. Let's see. So let's look at this code and see what's extra inside here that we don't need, or that we need to add, of course. I suspect it's more adding that's needed, really. So, okay, if the argument length is 1, it means they've only given the view list subcommand with no list name. So args1 is not going to work for us. That would need to be selected lists, get, and the player's name. So that we can do. Get name. So that's that fixed. Oh, it would be fixed if it didn't lag and give me the wrong item. There we go. So that's that part fixed. So if that's a list, pull it out. Oh, it's not args1 anymore, it's this again, so I'll just borrow that much and replace that. There it is. I should probably do the same here. In fact, I should do the same everywhere that it gets used. I think that should be right. But there is a part that I need to think about here. So it grabs the list from the file. It formats the heading correctly, that's fine. It displays the list correctly because it's grabbed it from the file. That's all well and good. It displays the error message correctly as well. But what it isn't doing is it's not checking to see if I have a selected list. It's just assuming I've got one and pulling it directly and then checking if it is a list. Now, that's okay, but I would like it to be a bit more robust. In a sense, I want it to be this one, where we had a check for have they selected a list and is it a list? Well, that's fine. I can actually borrow this if statement directly. So I'm going to borrow these few lines. I'm going to go down to args1. Here it is. And it's that one I want to replace. There we are. Just pasted it over the top. So in a sense, we've just added this check here so that it checks to see if we have selected a list at all. I should be able to build this now, and now I've got two different versions of the view list subcommand, one of which allows me to specify a list name and one of which does not require a list name. It requires an existing selected list. Let's give that a go. Oh, that is another copy of Minecraft. This is what I wanted though. What did I want to do here? I want to go into this game, go into here. Did that actually start up? Yes, it did. Let's close that one. So here I am in the game, and at the moment I don't have any lists selected. So if I do my lists, view list, and then test. Oh, it's that. There we go. It's actually coming up correctly. If I do it without the word test on the end, it says, I don't have a list called null, because it is null. I have no selected item there. So I should be able to select it though. So my lists, select list test, there it is. And then try this. Ta-da! It works perfectly. As you can see now, it's showing me the list is test. It's got 4 items and there they are. So it works perfectly. I will leave the last part of this for you, which is the removing of items, and we'll upload the code in the usual place. It'll be in the video description. It's a link to the PasteBin of it. Thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to the next time where we'll be moving on to more exciting plugins. Goodbye.